Hey everyone, and welcome to the Mark Prater podcast, where our aim is to connect our global family of Sovereign Grace churches with our executive director. Mark, here we are back in our natural environments recording because last weekend we were at the Regional Assembly in the
Yep.
Northeast, recorded a couple podcasts with some church planners. They're going to drop
Yep.
later this year, so
Yep.
look for that. That's coming,
Yep.
I think, over the summer probably. But here we are recording another one on Zoom, not in
Mhm.
person, as is our typical practice. And you have a number of encouraging updates about what God's doing globally in Sovereign Grace, because anybody who's been following along with the podcast or just the updates from Sovereign Grace knows God's at work across the globe, and we get to be a part of what God's doing in the advance of the gospel globally. And so you have a bunch of updates for us. So let's just get right into it. And first, take us to the Asia Pacific.
Let's go there first. And these are, by the way, updates that I'm aware of just because of my role serving Sovereign Grace and want to share those with others. I can't believe I get to do what I do, Ben, in serving
Mm,
our family of churches
thank you for
for
the
a
honor.
number of reasons. But one of them is you get a perspective on Sovereign Grace that not everyone can enjoy. So I just want to share that perspective. There's a number of things that are just recent events of what God is doing throughout the world through our small family of churches. Let's start in the Asia Pacific. We are right now in the process of forming a Korean ordination committee
Oh, let's go.
because we have one ordained elder in Seoul, South Korea, Songwon Kang, who's the senior pastor of Lord's Grace Church. But there's another man now stepping into the ordination process. And we've been able to
Hmm.
find three ordained Sovereign Grace elders who actually speak Korean that can
Wow.
form this committee. I didn't know we had that yet.
Yeah,
So,
nice.
pretty exciting that that's coming together and that we'll have another, hopefully, should he do well in the exams, another Sovereign Grace elder in South Korea. When this podcast drops, um, the week it drops, which is next week, we're recording on a Thursday, there will be six pastoral candidates who are officially starting their first exams in the
Hmm.
Philippines in the ordination process. So please
All
be
right.
praying for those men. We'll hopefully have six more ordained pastors in the Philippines. And
Go.
then just to mention another happening in the Asia Pacific world, Cornerstone Church in Knoxville, Tennessee, is sending a missions team over to Sydney, Australia,
Hmm.
to serve Dave Taylor and his church. Also, I'm sure Riley Spring and Parramatta, and that's a trip that's coming up. So please be praying
Hmm.
for that mission trip, and it's another expression of how we do partnership in Sovereign Grace, even across the globe. So just a few quick recent
Hmm.
events that are happening in the Asia Pacific part of the world.
Wonderful, man. Every time we do a Philippines update, it seems like somebody else is getting ordained
It
or
does.
on the track. So, wow, the Philippines, God's doing wonderful things down there, and in Korea and elsewhere as well. So, Asia Pacific, take us to Europe because there was a significant gathering there actually last
Yeah.
week, and there's a bunch of stuff going on there.
Yeah, a wonderful gathering in Europe. It was actually in England. It was the Sovereign Grace Europe Pastors and Wives Retreat. This is the Sovereign Grace Europe pastors have been meeting for a couple of years now. But this was a purposeful to include all the wives that could be there,
Hmm.
and it included both partner churches and candidate churches from Galway, Ireland, Bristol, England, London, England, uh, Santander, Spain,
Hmm.
Antalya, Turkey, and Torino, Italy. So that's just
Wow.
a representative of the churches that were there, and it was really just a wonderful time where they invested in their marriages. The sort of the theme was gospel centrality in marriage, and that's so important in building Sovereign Grace Europe and building Sovereign Grace overall, because a pastor's marriage is very important, not only in terms of glorifying God, but building healthy churches that have marriages that reflect how Jesus Christ relates to his bride. And so
Hmm.
I wanted to mention it also because I want to commend the leadership of Ed O'Mara, who's our area leader
Right.
there, who just led all of this and put it together. But also want to thank people who have given to the Europe Development Fund. That's
Hmm.
one of our global development funds that we have, because some of the funds were used to help make that retreat happen. So thank you for your giving to that fund. So just some things happening in Europe, and some of those candidate churches may be full partner churches in Europe before too long.
Wonderful. Yeah. My buddy Kyle Huber's over there in Belarus
Yep,
right now. He was just,
he
I saw
is.
pictures on Facebook at that European gathering. Shout out to Kyle.
Yep.
Wonderful to hear the work that began years ago in Europe that we were a part of, but it's only just growing seemingly exponentially. But we're not done because you're going to take
No.
us to Africa.
We're going to go to Africa next. Yeah, we'll go south to Africa. I've mentioned this before, but I wanted just to briefly mention again, church plants happening right now in Nairobi, Kenya,
Hmm.
and in Windhoek, Namibia. The church in Nairobi, Sovereign Grace Church in Nairobi, Kenya, is being planted, or the lead pastor there planting it is Brian Kiema, who is a graduate of our pastor's college in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. That plant is going well. And then Josh Kruger Jr. is
Hmm.
the lead pastor and the planter of Sovereign Grace Church in Windhoek, Namibia. And that plant has really gone well. They've begun to grow some, and they've had to find a different meeting location. So keep praying for those church plants. Let's go to Ethiopia, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. They are taking applications for their next PC class that will begin in the fall, I believe. And it's interesting. They're getting applications not only from Ethiopians, but I was talking to Josh Pinnell and Michael Granger a couple of weeks ago. They have one application from Ghana and another one from Uganda. So there can be other countries within on the continent that can send men there to be trained through that pastor's college should they meet their admission requirements. And I mention all of that in Ethiopia because those men are just doing really good work.
Yes, they are.
And they're also facing a unique challenge right now. Inflation in Ethiopia is at 80%. That's
Wow.
pretty much happened since the first of the year. The government made a decision to move their currency from government controlled to the free market.
Hmm.
And there's a long-term strategy in that initially the currency drops, but over time it'll go back up and it'll be strong and solid. That's the plan. Actually, Josh was telling me they did this several years ago in Kenya, and
Hmm.
Ethiopia has taken a similar response. So I mention all of that because all of their costs to rent a facility where they meet as a church, but also for all the pastors' college expenses, all of that has increased by 80%. And so,
Hmm.
if you're interested in supporting them, please give to the Africa Development Fund and mention the Pastors College and Trinity Fellowship in Addis Ababa, because we want to do all we can to keep them in business, so to speak.
Yeah.
They're just facing this unplanned, unique challenge right now, and so thank you for praying about that.
Hmm. Yes. Well, certainly challenges along with wonderful reports of God at work in Africa. But before we're done with the updates, we of course have to go to Latin America.
Must go to Latin America. So much happening in Latin America. The week this episode drops, uh, this will be, I believe, the second or third meeting of the Mexico National Assembly.
All
So
right.
Mexico is their own nation now,
Yes.
and they will meet for a national assembly next the week this episode drops in Guadalajara, Mexico. There will be. It's so encouraging. At this meeting, there will be 19 churches
Hmm.
and 55 pastors that are now a
Excellent.
part of that nation,
Wow.
whether that's a candidate church or a partner church in Mexico. So please pray for that. Pray for Carlos Contreras,
Hmm.
who's the director in Mexico. Just pray for him as he leads through that time. Rich Richardson will be there as well. And so pray for Rich if you would. Also, Jacobus Aldana, who is the senior pastor of Sovereign Grace Candidate Church in Santa Marta, Colombia, will
Hmm.
soon be taking a trip to Medellin, Colombia, where he'll lead a marriage retreat with a church there. And that church in Medellin is considering partnership in Sovereign Grace. So
Hmm.
part of the trip is not only to serve the married couples in that church, but to again explore should this church pursue formal partnership in Sovereign Grace. So pray for
Hmm.
Jacobus and for that trip. The church in Barranquilla, Colombia, has really just grown and done well.
Mm.
I just got an email recently from Alejandro, who's the senior pastor of that church, and they've grown so much they've had to look for a different meeting space because they can't fit everybody in. And it looks like they found a place. Looks like God has provided the funds to be able to get it. And so pray for their move, and
Hmm.
that God would continue to bless them, not just in terms of numerical growth, but really seeing conversions happening there in
Yeah.
Barranquilla, Colombia. One other thing, Trinity College is sending some of their
Mm.
students on a mission trip to Playa Azul, Costa Rica, where we have a
Nice.
candidate church there. That'll be coming up this month or next. I can't remember. So pray for that as well. So those are just some recent things that are happening not only in Latin America, but each of the areas of the world that I just mentioned.
Wonderful. You mentioned a couple different times the different global development funds.
Mm-hmm.
In case someone doesn't know and is checking the podcast, where do you find those at?
Yeah, you can find those on our Give page. So if you go to the
Give
Sovereign
page.
Grace website, sovereigngrace.com, you click on Give, there'll be a little menu that drops down. It'll say Development Funds. You can read a description of each of the
Mm.
funds there. And if you like to give, when you give, you can choose where to direct your money in a number of ways. But each of the development funds, Latin America, Europe, Asia Pacific, and Africa development funds, you can give to. And that's the way to go about that.
Wonderful. It's it's a beautiful thing to be able to bear one another's burdens, even globally, even with people maybe we haven't met before, but that we are as close to as family in Christ. Um, and so, of course, one way of bearing burdens is that financial kind of help. But the greatest way that we can bear one another's burdens is through prayer. And so, this is no throwaway line. As
Mm-hmm.
you're encouraging us to pray for what God's doing, it's because really at the end of the day, certainly we're grateful for the leadership of the men who are involved in all of these different uh, wonderful updates. Many faces come to mind, and we thank God for the men who
Yeah.
lead into these areas. But at the end of the day, we're not attempting to take credit for what's happening globally
No.
in sovereign grace. This is the Lord's doing. It's
Yes.
marvelous in our eyes. And before we conclude this podcast, you want to talk about that as well.
I do. I just want to remind us that this is the Lord's doing, as you said, Ben, and that we're only able to participate globally in the way that I just described, some of the ways I just described, because the Spirit of God has led us.
Yes.
And it's a reminder that we need to continue to have the Spirit of God lead us. In other words, this is not some big strategy that the leadership team came up with. These
Mm.
are Spirit led opportunities. And I want to remind all of us, whether you're a pastor or a member of one of our churches, to be people who pursue the work of the Spirit in our
Mm.
lives, and that we are led by Him, influenced by Him.
Yeah.
There's a wonderful quote that Spurgeon has that he gave in one of the lectures to his students, and he says this: "We should be delicately sensitive to His, meaning the Spirit's, faintest movement,
Mm.
and then we may expect His abiding presence. But if we are as the horse and as the mule, which have no understanding, we shall feel the whip, but we shall not enjoy the tender influence of the
Mm.
Comforter, capital C." And that's who we want to be, men who are spirit led in our mission and in gospel ministry. And we've agreed to this confessionally. It's in our statement of faith.
Right.
And our statement of faith exists not just as words on paper, as any good theology, it's intended to function in our lives. So I just want to remind
Yes.
all of us of what we have committed to and agreed through to confessionally in one section of our statement of faith. It says this: "The Spirit also desires to fill God's people continually with increased power for Christian life and witness. To be filled with the Spirit is to be more fully under His influence, more aware of His presence, and more effective in His service. All Christians, therefore, must continually seek to be filled with the Spirit by living and praying in such a way that invites the Spirit's work among us, actively longing for God to accomplish His gracious purposes in us and through us."
Mm.
And so, for God to do that in sovereign grace, to accomplish His gracious and good purposes in and through us. We need to be led by him.
Hmm.
We want to serve him, and we want to give him glory in all that we do. And that will be accomplished, at least in part, by praying, fill us with your spirit and lead us, influence us as we go about advancing the gospel of Jesus Christ throughout the world.
Excellent. Well, thank you for the updates. Thanks for your encouragement and by pointing us to our statement of faith. Just every time read the statement of faith, hear it read, just struck just by how easily one feels their heart being drawn toward worship. Just
Right.
by just remembering the glorious truths that are captured in our statement of faith. So much to be grateful for, but more than anything, how grateful we are for what God is doing among us. So
Amen.
let's continue to press into that. So thank you, Mark. Thank you all for checking out the podcast. We'll see you here next week, Lord willing. Bye for now.
Thank you for watching. If you have questions or comments, Mark would love to hear from you. For more videos like this, hit subscribe on YouTube or by email at markkprater.com.